Noah Hanifin is no longer a Calgary Flame, and now we can start evaluating Craig Conroy.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Nick Zeraris. Nick, how are you doing today?
My eyes see spreadsheets when I close them.
Well, good news is the trade deadline is just about here, and we're going to talk about the Noah Hanifin trade that finally happened last night and kind of had some time to process it and actually analyze it, and rather than immediately react with emotions, which is, still a good thing, but try to approach it a little differently here. And we're going to talk all about this kind of stockpiling of defensemen. It's kind of like the apocalypse where you're stockpiling like canned goods, but we're using defensemen. And we get to start evaluating Craig Conroy. But before we dive into all that, make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. When I saw the Noah Hanifin to Vegas, or I hear Vegas is in talks tweet, I was like, this is it. We're getting something. And we did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought Vegas would be more looking at forwards than defensemen, but I mean, this fits their MO. If there's a good player available and it doesn't cost them anything off of their team, or even if it does cost them something off their team, they've been willing to do it. They pursue even the most marginal of upgrades. And I remember 2 years ago when they missed the playoffs, the first year Eichel was there because he only played like 30-something games coming off the injury. There was a lot of waxing of, you can't run an NHL team like this. You have to account for the players. You can't treat people like this. Like when they gave away Marc-Andre Fleury and Max Pacioretty for nothing because they needed the cap space. And then they won the Stanley Cup, and now everybody's all in agreement. Well, Kelly McCrimmon's the best general manager in the league. And yeah, he didn't give up a whole lot for a defenseman who's pretty good. Like whether Hanifin plays with Pietrangelo or he bumps down in the lineup, Hanifin's a good defenseman. He is better than the worst defenseman they had in their lineup. They made their worst defenseman in their lineup better because Hanifin is sliding into someone else's spot. For Vegas, this is great.
Yeah. And with people kind of being frustrated with the another underwhelming return, we knew that Craig Conroy was going to take the best offer, or so he says, and he saw this as the best fit, as long as, Hanifin in his no trade list worked out. But I don't know. I'm not like overly annoyed, or I'm neutral on it because he's guy's 26 years old, and then you have 2 draft picks.
I don't want to say indifferent because that's boring, but like, it's fine. The return's not overwhelming. It's fine. I don't hate it. It's just, like we said, in regards to the trades of the last couple of weeks, whether it be Lindholm or Tanev, you don't have any slam dunks here. You don't have any guarantees. Like, Miromanov. I will get that right eventually. Miromanov, there we go. Miromanov is 26. He stayed in Russia quite a while. He has a handful of NHL games. He may or may not be a guy. If he were a guy, I think he would probably be playing in Vegas's lineup, being that they need to save money wherever they can, and being that he's already 26, and I know the Flames signed him to an extension as pretty much as soon as they got him. But this isn't academic. This isn't as simple of, okay, let's get these guys in the system. A lot of these guys, including Miromanov, are going to take a little while. I mean, he might be a little bit different being that he's already 26, but a lot of these guys, we're talking about multiple seasons not sliding right into the lineup.
Yeah, and I feel like it's okay to kind of feel some type of way about it, but also like understand that this is going to be a multi-year process.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's no slam dunks. Like there's nothing where I'm like, oh, wow, can you believe that actually happened? I don't want to say Conroy got fleeced because I feel like that's not
You can't
true.
say that. You can't. The thing about that is it's very easy for the team getting the star player to say they won the trade because they're getting the instant return.
Right.
I will say, historically, the team getting the star player typically does win these trades. So both are true simultaneously. Yeah. It's really hard to get good value when you do 4 quarters for $1.
Yeah. And I mean, I have some reservations about a 26-year-old who's 6 months younger than Noah Hanifin slotting into the lineup. But I mean, he has played with Pahal before, and apparently they have really good chemistry. So, you know, maybe it'll take less time for him to get acclimated and whatnot. But I'm not entirely happy, but I'm also not entirely like bummed out. I'm just glad they didn't throw $7 or $8 million at Noah Hanifin for the next 7 or 8 years.
No, and we've talked about this a lot, is you got to think about it not just in terms of right now, not just next year, but the multi-year process. What's more valuable? The first round pick, which we haven't talked about the condition being Vegas could still trade this pick and the Flames get their first round pick next year, which I didn't know you could do as a stipulation.
I had no idea you could do that.
That's kind of hilarious. And I that does worry me to some extent because, you know, Vegas is going to be very good this year. They're going to be very good next year. More likely than not, you're getting a pick at the back end of the first round. And then the third going up to a second, that's feasible. Vegas wins a round and that becomes better. But just, I understand what they were trying to do. They have got an abundance of assets. This is the right way to go about it. It's just, I don't know if this is what I would have chosen to done. And one last thing on Hanifin and just like the concept. What's more valuable? These assets or Noah Hanifin's age 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 seasons? The Flames probably aren't ready to be competitive again until his age 30, 31 season. And at that point, we're probably talking about the start of a physical decline. So not great, not a slam dunk, but you know, I when I went on with Gil this morning to record for the YouTube channel, I said a B-. It's fine. It's not bad, but it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, it got the job done, which I mean is ultimately what everyone wanted and has wanted since Craig Conroy took over. So I understand. I wonder if they, down the road, with all these draft picks, if they bundle them together, not all of them, but they use them in a trade to get someone like a Noah Hanifin or like a forward that they need that could really move the needle when it comes to that playoff push when they're ready.
Absolutely. That's the goal when you're getting all these assets, and why I prefer draft picks to prospects is draft picks are more liquid. You can do more with them. You know, it's not like you have to sell your stock to get the capital. You already have the capital. Draft picks are the easiest thing to trade because they can be anything. You pass the burden of responsibility onto someone else. When you take a prospect, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment as far as targeting defensemen, when you take a prospect, you have to have a clear vision for them. Otherwise, you're more or less buying lottery tickets. You have to have a clear plan to get this guy from point A to point B, or we're just throwing things at the wall and hoping one of them pans out.
Yeah, and that's not really, really are kind of a gamble, but that's what makes this fun and why I love revisiting drafts, even though I have no idea how to value players. But coming up next, we are going to talk about the abundance of defensemen that the Flames have decided to stockpile, and we will be right back after this. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring place where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hopping from candidate or hoping to find the right candidate with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can do it all for you. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. So the Flames went from having like a pretty solid decor, like I would say one of the better ones over the last few years, to this. What do you make of it?
A few things. Number one, their 1-2-3 still is decent. Like I know that's going to sound stupid on a team that's probably not going to make the playoffs, but Anderson, Weegar, both upper echelon players. You know, I would feel if I were a Stanley Cup contender and Rasmus Anderson were my number 1D, I would be okay with that. I think there are definitely guys who are better than him, but he's in the upper tier as far as number 1D. Weegar, upper echelon offensive defenseman, and he's a really quality defensive defenseman. His skating, I do worry about how his game will change as he gets older and maybe slows down a little bit because he's a bit dependent on his skating. But he's given you nothing. He's been one of, if not the Flames' best players the last 2 seasons, so there's nothing to gripe about there. And Chillington, it's more of a projection and optimism, but he looks fine. He looks like he's... For somebody who hasn't played in the NHL in 2 seasons, I'm not particularly worried about him. It's more a matter of, are they going to be able to ramp him up? And, you know, it's really hard when we're trying to articulate development because we're thinking about it in this arc where we're trying to progress at a reasonable rate, but being that it was stopped for 2 years, you don't know how good he possibly can be, as opposed to prior to the said 2-year step away, how good he could have been. So I think there's a clear understanding that even though they have good defensemen, you can never have enough. Ultimately, and being that these guys are all at various points and they've got significant AHL time, I think that tells me that the Flames think they have a really good pro scouting department, that they've identified these guys.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree there. I think that, it's obvious to just say that Weegar and Anderson, like that 1-2 punch is fantastic. But I'm very excited to see what they do with Chillington, because they are going to need him to play a lot more minutes, or at least a considerable amount. And I really am intrigued to see if they call anyone like Jamie Poirier is back or should be back from an injury. So I don't know if he's going to see some NHL time towards the end of the season, but this is a free trial. We've talked about it.
Yeah, that's effectively what it is. They're going to try and take care of that. I would like them to retain Chillington. I would like them to give him a real opportunity here. We talked about that coming into the deadline, that after the guys get traded, it's an opportunity for the guys who are still here to not just prove their worth, but say, I'm more than what I've been. If you give me more opportunity, I'm ready for it. And Chillington is a great example of that, where use these last 15 games to really see where he's at and say, okay, if we do this with him and his usage, this many minutes, penalty kill, power play, whatever, can we add another minute or two to that? Because then that changes our calculus. I know he's a little bit he's not old, but he's not in his developmental stage anymore. He's not 21, 22. So this is probably relatively close to who he is as a player. He's good. It's just a matter of what can you do with him. And then all the draft picks, Miramonov honestly should play at some point in the next month for the Flames. He really should, being that they're going to need bodies. I know they had 8 defensemen on the roster. They waived somebody earlier today to account Osterley. They waived Osterley to account for the new inputs, but I'd like to see Miramonov play a little bit. Again, there is nothing to lose. He's gotten some NHL reps with the Golden Knights, but we've got 15 games here. I don't want to say the games don't matter, but it's more valuable understanding where he's at than it is for the Flames to win these games.
Yes, I completely agree with you there. And, the Flames have had a lot of these trial periods, I guess you could say, towards the end of their seasons recently. And that's good. It's bad because you're not making the playoffs, but it's good because you kind of have this opportunity to experiment and see what works and what doesn't. And you kind of have this blueprint, or at least an outline for going into the summer and free agency and obviously the following season.
Absolutely. You want as much information as you can have. The best information you can have is firsthand account, which is the guys playing. It's great that the pro personnel department identified these guys and Conroy clearly values their opinion. The A is very different from the national, as a lot of people will tell you. You play in the AHL, you're playing 2-3 times a week. A lot of the games are on the weekend. They're spaced out. You're riding the bus. Mm-hmm. They're a whole lot faster up here. They're a whole lot better at hockey up here. There will be some ugly moments over the next few weeks as guys who are adapting to the NHL play in the NHL for the first time at an extended period of time.
Yes, and I think it goes without saying, but you don't need to write a guy off after 5 or 6 shifts. It's you aren't going to you can't just copy and paste a player into a whole different situation and expect immediate success. And if you get it, that's great, but it's probably not sustainable. So manage those expectations.
Exactly. There's going to be trade-offs. We're going to we have to take our medicine. No matter what, there are going to be some rough moments, some lean seasons over the next couple of years as they reorganize the roster around the next wave of guys. It's better to do it sooner rather than later, because the longer you wait, the more intense and long that rebuild period really has to be. The quicker and more direct you are with it, the easier it is to go through. I mean, you think about some of the teams, the Senators have been rebuilding since they traded Erik Karlsson. The Sabres have been rebuilding since they last made the playoffs. There are a lot of teams where they don't realize their moment is over until well past. The Flames identified it. It might have been a season too late as far as maximal value, but they're at least understanding to a degree, and we can talk about that in the process part of this coming up, but they identified the problem and they are taking steps to correct the problem. We'll see how good those steps are, but at the very least, we're trying something.
Yeah, and that's we've talked about really this entire lead up to the trade deadline. Just taking that forward step and leaving the launch pad of, are we okay with being mediocre, or okay, we need to actually do something about this to be truly competitive. That's the first big step that I feel it probably is a season or two too late, but I mean, better now than never, I guess.
You got to do it eventually. You have to do it eventually. because the longer you wait, the worse the process is. And we can end the segment on this note. Look at where the Penguins are at right now. The medicine the Penguins are going to have to take 2 years from now when Sidney Crosby probably retires. That team is going to be Blackhawks level bad in 2-3 seasons from now. They are going to have to be that bad because they waited as long as they possibly could to start the process of transitioning the team.
Yes. And coming up next, we are going to talk about Conroy's process so far in his 10 months of being a general manager, coming up next. But first, I want to talk to you about Factor. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. That's perfect for people like Nick and I because we are always on the go, whether it is recording podcasts, writing, or getting ready to cover games. So squeezing in a quick, delicious, nutritious meal, it's perfect. Factor's great. With 2-minute meals, you can fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant-quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. You can get pancakes, smoothies, and more, and discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. They have no prep and no mess meals. Factor's meals are ready to heat and eat, so there's no prepping, cooking, or cleanup needed. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. And speaking of savings, did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. As we are 1 day away, we are less than 24 hours away from the trade deadline, and we use this as a benchmark. You know, like American Thanksgiving, Christmas, All-Star break, the trade deadline. And we're here. How has this gone, in your opinion?
Like I said at the top, I think I understand his process. It worries me because they are putting a lot of faith in their decision making. We don't have a ton of understanding of what their decision making looks like. So this is leaving a lot in the air. The positive is that over the next couple of years, they are going to have ample opportunities to reconfigure the roster. You know, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They've got 15 picks in the first 3 rounds over the next 3 seasons. That is ample opportunity to restock the cupboard. They have enough opportunity that even if they mess up a handful of these picks, they still can get them. You know, if out of those 15 picks, you turn 5 of them into roster players, that would be a really good hit rate. That would be a really good hit rate because we operate under the assumption a first-round pick's going to play 200 games 20% of the time. If you've got 2 first-round picks, you increase your odds ever so slightly. Not every pick is going to work out. The goal over the next 15 picks they make in the first 3 rounds should be to get 4 roster players out of those 15. That entirely comes down to the scouting department, which is what's concerning because we don't have a big track record for what they like to do.
Yeah, And I feel like 4 is a good amount. It's not shooting for 50%, which to me feels like a complete just irrational and it's not going to happen.
No, you wouldn't bet on a coin flip. And that's the thing about this that's crazy. You know, there are people who stupidly bet on a coin flip or play dice, and the odds are very rough and not in your favor. The odds in the draft are worse.
Yeah, they are. And I am very, I guess, I don't know. Like you said, the scouting department doesn't have like the best track record like Dallas. Dallas's draft picks have turned into things. And of course, there's always going to be the Flames picked ahead of this team and they got the star player. And it's like, you only know what you know at that time.
And you really won't for a while. Like, even prospects who have good developmental backgrounds, there are plenty of guys who, for whatever reason, don't work at the NHL level. You're taking a lot on trust right now, which why, if you're a Flames fan and you're nervous, you have every right to be. You really do have a right to be antsy about this because you don't have a ton of proven stock in terms of what you got in return. And you don't know what the general manager's thought process is in terms of talent evaluation. I mean, I know there's been a lot of apprehension about some of the defensive prospects they've gotten back because they are prioritizing defense first guys who have value. But the way the league is trending, you want all of your defensemen, even if they're not offensive defensemen, to be good puck handlers, which, you know, that's something that develops over time. But none of these guys, other than Brustowicz, really scream puck mover, modern NHL defenseman. The other guys, big defense first types. Even though Muramanov has offensive tinge to his game, he's a bigger, more imposing guy than you would like your prospects to be with the way the game is trending.
Yeah, and it's fine to feel, you know, some type of way about things and being unsure because you really don't know what any of this is turning into. And when I see fans talking about, you know, we want to lose so we get those better draft picks, but then also dogging on because like the return isn't a slam dunk or something. It's like, well, do you actually want to win? Like, what? It feels like a double-edged sword sometimes.
Liquidating and selling is scary. You don't know what is going to happen. You have to have trust in the infrastructure of the organization. And if you trust your decision makers, your pro and your amateur scouting, you feel okay because they have all these draft picks and their cap situation will start to look a little less perilous going forward as the cap goes up and they get some guys off their books. They'll have a little more flexibility, but you are going into the unknown. The unknown is scary. It is perfectly reasonable to have some apprehension about the direction they're going in from that perspective.
Yeah. And I really am cautiously optimistic about at least next season, just because we don't know what things could look like come this time next year. Things could look very different. And I'm hoping that, you know, we stick to the plan and don't deviate too far from it. But ultimately, this is up to the people who are professionals and like, at least it's not us. It's not our jobs on the line.
No, amateur scouting is not something I dip my toe into. I can do an okay write-up if I watch 4 or 5 games of a player and take some notes. That I can do. I'm not dipping my toes into watching the OHL on a Tuesday. I'm just not. I'm going to be honest with you. Junior hockey is great. The World Juniors are fun. I am not getting in the weeds of watching the London Knights on a Wednesday in February. I have other things to do. I completely agree and understand. I think, you know, everyone does have their little niches. Like they follow the NHL and they might like, you know, the AHL or the OHL or, you know, a different type of development league. And that's
good for them. And I give them a lot of credit. But today, we wrap up with the Noah Hanifin trade. Finally happened. Craig Conroy did the darn thing. And now we take the next steps into figuring out if Markstrom is going away this summer. But tune in to us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Nick, do you have any final words for our listeners today?
We're in the home stretch, less than 24 hours to go.